Is looking to combat fraud, he says, in government, and says that taxpayers need to be confident that their money's going to the right places. He's filed the Fraud Prevention and Accountability Act, which would establish a permanent office to examine fraud. East Texas News Weekend's Michael Richardson has the details.
Congressman Pete Sessions says the federal government has lost $3 trillion to potential fraud and improper payments since 2003. To combat fraud, including in programs such as Social Security, he's filed a bill that would establish the Office of the Inspector General for Fraud, Accountability, and Recovery in the Treasury.
I would suggest, and I did in our hearings, that there are a huge number of people still out there who are receiving these benefits that will need to stop. But it requires a professional background analysis.
The bill would make the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee obsolete, with assets transferred to one office instead. The office could audit any federal award worth at least $50,000 and emergency spending tied to disaster relief or economic recovery.
It is an insistence on a bipartisan basis that Congress empower the administration to have to stop this tremendous loss of money, gaming fraud, and taking away from the American people money that they deserved.
The bill passed the House on a largely partisan basis last month, with 28 Democrats voting in favor. Sessions says the goal is to focus on fraud prevention, not just recovery.
The American people need to have confidence that the money that Congress is attempting to give in benefits, in the needs of the American people, is wisely used.
Michael Richardson, East Texas News Weekend.
Sessions says he could see that bill being included as part of an end-of-year package. He says he's very confident the bill will be signed by President Trump.